At 7:55 in the morning on June 18th, 2001, 15-year-old Danielle Jones walked out of her home in East Tilbury and headed to school. A few minutes later, she changed direction. She never made it to class. She didn't take any money. She didn't take her charger. She didn't tell her parents she was going anywhere different. And by that evening, she still hadn't come home. Witnesses later said they saw her near a blue van. There was a man inside, talking to her. Other people said they saw a girl who looked like Danielle arguing with the driver. That blue van belonged to her uncle, Stuart Campbell. 5 days later, he was arrested. On the surface, he looked like a caring relative, a builder, a father of two, part of the family. But police quickly uncovered something very different. Years earlier, he had kept a 14-year-old girl in his home and taken explicit photographs of her. He admitted it. Investigators would later uncover a pattern stretching back roughly 20 years, with dozens of young victims. The method was always the same: gain trust, isolate, control. In Danielle's room, detectives found notes. "Hi, princess. Kiss. Kiss." He had left them in her bedroom while the family was on vacation. Inside his house, police found photography equipment, explicit images of minors, a bag containing women's underwear and handcuffs, and a pair of white stockings with bloodstains. Forensic testing revealed a mixture of DNA, his and Danielle's. After she disappeared, a message was sent from Danielle's phone. "Hi, Stu. Thanks for being so nice. You're the best uncle ever." But when investigators analyzed it, something felt off. The writing style didn't match the way she normally texted. The word what had been spelled as what. She never wrote it that way. Not once. Phone data showed that both phones, his and Danielle's, were connected to the same cell tower. For about 30 hours, they remained in the same area, near his home. His alibi, a supposed trip to a store in Raleigh, didn't line up with the mobile data. And the call to his wife that he claimed he made? It never happened. Police never found Danielle's body. The case was built entirely on circumstantial evidence. Prosecutors argued that he had been grooming her for years, creating tension between her and her parents, keeping a record of every interaction, maintaining control. And then, suddenly, the case took a sharp turn. New evidence surfaced against another person. Who was that? And how did this story actually end? We'll get to that. If you want to hear the full, shocking details, stay with us. But first, we're going back to the very beginning of this story. Kids all across the United Kingdom were counting down the days until the final school term would end and summer break would finally begin. That morning, after getting dressed, having breakfast, and saying goodbye to her family, 15-year-old Danielle Jones left the house at around 7:55 a.m. and headed to school. Later that day, her parents got a call. It was the school. Their daughter had never shown up. She hadn't taken her phone charger. She hadn't packed any spare clothes. She didn't have any money with her. And just like that, Danielle Jones seemed to vanish without a trace. Danielle Sarah Jones was born on October 16th, 1985, in Essex, England, to her parents Tony and Linda. She grew up with her mom, her dad, and her two younger brothers. According to her mother, Danielle was a cheerful, sweet little girl, though not very confident. As she got older, she stayed pretty home-oriented, with a great sense of humour, but still very shy. Even with that insecurity, she had a wide circle of friends, and one of her biggest passions? Animals. She absolutely adored her two little pet rabbits, like they meant everything to her. One family member Danielle had grown close to was her uncle. Tony's sister was married to a man named Stuart Campbell from Grays in Essex. He was a construction worker and a father of two. When Danielle and her brothers were younger, their uncle spent time with them, played with them, treated all the kids the same. Linda later said he could be charming, almost magnetic, but also overly confident. Talking about his relationship with Tony, she explained that while they got along on the surface, there was always something about Stuart that didn't sit right with her husband. When Stuart married Tony's sister, Danielle was a bridesmaid at their wedding. From that point on, he was officially part of the family, but his presence slowly started creating tension. Linda and Tony grew more and more irritated with how often he showed up. It felt constant, almost intrusive. As Danielle got older, Stuart began showing what seemed like a special interest in her. He would meet her when she got off the school bus. He'd stand by his van so it was obvious he was there, visible to everyone. And that embarrassed Danielle. She didn't like the extra attention it brought. He came by their house 4 to 5 times a week. 4 to 5. That's a lot. Eventually, Linda and Tony openly admitted they were exhausted by it. Tony later remembered one moment in particular. Stuart was sitting on the couch next to Danielle, repeatedly asking her, "Why are you shy, Danielle? Why are you blushing?" When Tony stepped in and asked what was going on, Stuart brushed it off, saying there was no problem. It seemed like Danielle was trying to distance herself from his behavior, but Stuart resisted that distance. For Linda and Tony, this was incredibly difficult, because, if they accused him of inappropriate behavior and they were wrong, the damage to the family could be irreversible. And all they really had were isolated incidents, things Stuart could easily explain away as harmless misunderstandings. On the morning Danielle disappeared, her brother was watching from the window. He saw her walk out through the gate and turn left, the usual direction she took to school. Then, just seconds later, he saw her turn around and walk the opposite way. 2 other students also saw her. They assumed she might be heading to the nearest shop, but that same direction also led to a bus route that could take her to school. When the school called to say Danielle had never arrived, Linda was stunned. She knew her daughter. Danielle wasn't rebellious. She wasn't a rule breaker. She would never just skip class. Not like that.
Good evening, Mrs. Fisher. Can I help you?
Yes, I wonder if you can. It's regarding my daughter.
Yeah. How old's your daughter, love?
15.
15. And how long's she been missing, love?
Since 8 o'clock this morning.
Her father later said that even in the very unlikely event that Danielle had skipped school, she would have come home before sunset. She was afraid of the dark. She never stayed out late. As the hours passed, her friends and relatives kept calling her phone. They kept sending messages, but Danielle didn't respond. That alone was deeply unsettling, because that wasn't her. She would often leave little notes for her mom, explaining where she was going, maybe to a neighbor's house, maybe to a friend's, and she always called when she arrived. Always. While family members and neighbors searched the area, going street by street looking for any sign of her, Linda stayed home. She didn't lock the doors, just in case. In case Danielle called. In case she walked back through the door. Tony, meanwhile, drove to his sister's house. There was no answer. He looked through the window and noticed video equipment set up in the living room. That struck him as odd. It didn't sit right. What also felt strange was this: everyone was out searching for Danielle. Everyone except Stuart Campbell. Linda later said that when Tony came back home, he was visibly upset, frustrated, angry even. He couldn't understand why Stuart wasn't helping look for her. And it wasn't just the family who were deeply concerned. Detective Superintendent Peter Coltman from Essex Police later explained that Danielle's school friends were extremely worried. They were actively contacting police, asking what they could do, pushing for help in finding her. That night, Linda barely slept. She kept thinking she would hear the door open. That any second now, Danielle would walk in and say, "I'm back." But the night came and went, and Danielle never returned. Police arrived at the house with search dogs and began combing through the area. They traced the route Danielle had taken that morning. At first, she walked forward in her usual direction, and then she turned around and went back the same way. Her mother later said she was in shock. still holding on to this fragile hope that her daughter was alive, that she would come home. Over the next 3 days, officers also searched the family's home. They found nothing significant. As the hours turned into days, the search area widened. Police went door to door throughout East Tilbury. They spoke to residents, asking questions, requesting access to sheds, garages and outbuildings, just to make sure Danielle wasn't hiding somewhere, or injured, or unable to call for help. The public response was massive. People showed up, they volunteered, they shared information. Linda said the support from the community was simply incredible. It was overwhelming, in a good way. But even with all that effort, there was still no sign of Danielle.
4 weeks today since Danielle went missing. Tasking today for teams 2 and 3 will be a footpath that runs from Butts Lane to a railway bridge at Linford in Essex. Okay. The divers will be continuing today at the lake nearest to the East Tilbury village. There's tire tracks footmarks on one area of that lake where they'll be paying particular attention.
Hours passed, and there was still no word from Danielle. Hope was starting to fade. The police were becoming more and more convinced that something terrible had happened to her. The case was handed over to a specialized serious crime investigation unit. Detective Constable Ed Mayo was assigned as the family liaison officer. His job was to support the family throughout the investigation and keep them updated the moment any new information came in. Family liaison officers play like an incredibly important role. They're basically the key link between the family and the investigation team. As the investigation picked up speed, it was absolutely vital for Ed to build trust with the family and get a real sense of how they worked as a unit. That would help him figure out what kind of girl Danielle was and how her family functioned. Her parents had already told police about their concerns regarding her relationship with Stuart. After their daughter disappeared, they started questioning what that relationship had really been like. Danielle had been missing for 3 days now, and suspicion was zeroing in on one person, Stuart Campbell. The initial checks carried out by Essex police, and later confirmed by the Serious Crime Unit, kept coming back to one thing: a blue van. A witness had seen the driver of a blue van talking to Danielle. There were also reports of a girl matching her description apparently arguing with a man in a blue van. Danielle's uncle, Stuart Campbell, owned a blue van. Once that information surfaced, the investigators' fears were basically confirmed. She had most likely been abducted. A press conference was called immediately, and media interest in the story just kept growing. Like, when someone goes missing, the press plays such a critical role. It's through the media that names, photos, and descriptions get out there, and that can lead to brand new leads for police. As suspicion around Stuart Campbell intensified, investigators started digging into his past, and what they found was shocking. He had previously held a 14-year-old girl captive in his home and taken explicit photographs of her. He had pleaded guilty to that crime. After spending a year in custody before trial, he was released once the process wrapped up. Linda and Tony knew he'd had some trouble with the law, but whenever they asked about it, they were told it was nothing serious, and that there had been some big misunderstanding. Linda later said that she and Tony had genuinely believed he'd been cleared. Further police investigation revealed 30 victims over 20 years. His pattern was always the same. He'd introduce himself as a photographer specializing in glamour shoots, hand out business cards with his contact info, lure unsuspecting girls back to his house, and then take explicit photos under the guise of a glamour photo session. After his arrest for holding that 14-year-old girl, he had somehow managed to convince the family that he himself was the victim of one big misunderstanding. Police were so concerned about Campbell's behavior that they needed to either completely clear him or find evidence that directly implicated him. They put him under surveillance, but his behavior only made things look worse. He didn't look anything like a worried uncle whose niece had gone missing. Instead, he was driving around parking lots, photographing silver cars that matched the description of his own Nissan Primera. It looked like he was trying to build himself an alibi. After several hours of surveillance, police had to make a call. It was critical for the investigation team to weigh every option carefully. They couldn't risk Danielle's life if she was still alive and being held by Campbell. And at the same time, they couldn't let him stay free and potentially destroy evidence, or worse, eliminate their only chance of tracking her down. 5 days after she was last seen, just around midnight, Stuart Campbell was arrested.
Can you say your name, please?
Stuart Campbell.
With reasonable grounds to believe, Stuart, you know where she is, don't you?
No.
Where is she?
The lady said to me not to say nothing, right?
Right. Can your conscience allow you to do that? You know where she is. What's her name?
Danielle.
Danielle. You're not going to talk to her, Stuart?
No, it's hey.
They were worried about your relationship with Danielle. Tell me what it was about her, Stuart. Why you wanted to be with her.
No comment.
As Danielle moved into her teenage years, her relationship with her father sometimes became tense. Linda later explained that it was nothing unusual, just the typical push and pull you see between teenagers and their parents. Mood swings, disagreements, that kind of thing. Nothing extreme, but during questioning, Campbell brought it up. He claimed that before Danielle disappeared, the family had supposedly been close to falling apart. It sounded dramatic, like he was trying to paint a picture, and for investigators, that raised an important question. Was he describing reality, or was he trying to rewrite it?
You don't understand the actual structure of the family in this house.
Explain it
With
to
no
me.
disrespect to Tone and Lynn, they sort of at their wits' end with Danielle. So much so that she can't stand being in the same room as her dad. It's just easier to try and be a middle broker between them. So you can try and get mum and dad to talk to Danielle, Danielle to give a bit there, them to give a little bit there, just to keep peace, and then the boys aren't all upset all the time.
Campbell's alibi was that he had been at a home improvement store in Rayleigh, but he didn't buy anything, and to investigators, that immediately felt strange. He said he was on his way back home, but got delayed, so he supposedly called his wife to let her know. After returning, he claimed he went over to a neighbour's house to help build a wooden deck. Even after repeated questioning, and despite the fact that he wasn't exactly cooperative, police didn't have enough legal grounds to hold him any longer, so he was released on bail while the investigation continued. Detective Superintendent Peter Coltman later admitted that the thought of Campbell being released deeply worried him. He considered him an extremely dangerous offender. Police needed hard evidence. Everything was checked. Then checked again. During a search of Danielle's bedroom, officers found a pencil case. Inside were 2 notes. The first read, "Hi, Princess. Hope you have a lovely holiday. Text me when you get back. Love, Stuart. Kiss." The second said, "Hi, Princess. If you missed my last note, I just thought I'd leave another to let you know that I do miss your smile. Kiss, kiss." A few weeks before she disappeared, Danielle had gone on vacation with her family. While they were away, Campbell had entered her room and left those notes there. She never told her mother, but she told a friend. That friend was extremely disturbed. She couldn't understand how he had gotten into the house, and more than that, why he would cross that line with his own niece. Campbell had previously done renovation work in the house. He had installed new back doors. Although police never officially found a key, investigators believed he likely had access to one. At the same time, searches were being carried out at Stuart Campbell's home, a semi-detached house on Meadow Road. Inside, police found a large amount of photography equipment. They also discovered explicit photographs of young girls he had taken, and in addition to that, indecent images of children downloaded from the internet. When the search moved up into the attic, officers found a hidden bag. Inside it were numerous deeply disturbing items, including women's underwear and handcuffs. Police believed that when Campbell brought young girls to his home, he used the contents of that bag and photographed them in explicit situations. Also inside the bag was a pair of white stockings. At first glance, they might have seemed ordinary, but in context, they became critical evidence. A small amount of blood was found on them. The stockings were sent for forensic testing. The results showed a mixture of DNA Campbell's and Danielle's present on the white nylon fabric. As part of the investigation, his vehicle, the blue van, was also seized. Detective Chief Superintendent Steve Reynolds told the BBC that Campbell had established a relationship with Danielle that was clearly inappropriate and likely unlawful. However, police could not publicly state that they suspected Stuart Campbell of murdering his niece. In the United Kingdom, a suspect's name can only formally be linked to a charge after it is brought. Public reaction was enormous. Crowds gathered along the banks of the River Thames near Danielle's home to help search. The atmosphere was described as eerily quiet, almost heavy but filled with cold determination. People were prepared to search for as long as it took. Danielle's family continued to hope she was alive. But when police expanded the search into deep water areas and abandoned buildings, that hope began to slip away. Stuart Campbell told investigators he had received a text message from his niece's phone. He wanted them to see it. It read, "Hi Stu, what you up to? I'm in so much trouble." Police also discovered that, on the day Danielle disappeared, another message had been sent from her phone to Campbell. It said, "Hi Stu, thanks for being so nice. You're the best uncle ever. Tell Mum I'm so sorry. Love you loads. Dan. Kiss, kiss, kiss." For a brief moment, it looked like Danielle might still be alive. Her parents felt that spark of hope again, like maybe, just maybe, she was out there somewhere. At the same time, they were heartbroken. Why wouldn't she contact them directly? Why not just come home? But that hope didn't last long. As detectives began assembling the pieces, the items found in his house, his documented history with underage girls, those messages started to feel darker, more calculated, almost staged. Because of that, several experts were brought into the investigation, including a telecommunications specialist. That analysis was critical. It reinforced police belief that Campbell had lied about being at the home improvement store in Rayleigh. Investigators conducted a cell site analysis related to the call he claimed he made to his wife. The conclusion was clear. That call never happened. Instead, the data placed his phone in the East Tilbury and Corringham area. Police also brought in a forensic linguist to examine the language used in the two text messages and compare them to Danielle's previous messages. One detail immediately stood out. In the message sent to Campbell, the word "what" was spelled "what." Danielle never spelled it that way. In her past messages, she always used the correct spelling. Cell tower analysis revealed something else. At the time that message was sent, Campbell's phone and Danielle's phone were connected to the same mobile base station. Further investigation showed that after she disappeared, both phones remained together near Campbell's home for approximately 30 hours. That detail changed everything. Desperate for answers, desperate for any new lead at all, Danielle's devastated family turned to the media, hoping someone, somewhere, knew something.
I'm so desperate to get her back. We're devastated
really.
Before long, the case was featured on Crime Watch on the BBC. 4 weeks after Danielle disappeared, an entire episode was dedicated to her case. Millions of people were suddenly watching. Her face was on national television. Details of that morning, the route she walked, the blue van, the text messages were laid out for the public to see. For her family, it was overwhelming. But at the same time, it felt necessary. Because when a case reaches that level of exposure, tips start coming in. And sometimes, all it takes is one person recognizing something, a vehicle, a detail, a memory, to shift the entire investigation.
Can't have missed this in the news. It's had huge publicity, and perhaps the chance of finding new witnesses tonight might be slim.
Well, I'm convinced that Danielle has been abducted. I know that she was last seen walking towards Coronation Avenue, but after that I don't know where she went to, and we really need to speak to anybody who saw her after she left the road close to where she lives. anyone who may have been there, they may think that we already have the information and we don't need to speak to them again. We do. Anybody who can tell us anything about Danielle's movements after she left home should contact us urgently.
And what about the possible sighting of Danielle arguing with a man? You know about that, but you want more witnesses on that, if possible.
I want witnesses to anything that happened to Danielle. It's possible that it was her involved in that argument. It may have been somebody else, and if it was, let's speak to them. Let's rule them out so we can be clear what we're now looking for. But if that was Danielle and anybody else saw an argument or a conversation between two people, speak to us. Tell us what you saw. No matter how insignificant it is, it can contribute to our investigation. It may be the absolute key to what we're looking for.
Given that you believe she was abducted, is there anything that may have been going on in her life before this that might shed any light?
I certainly think it's a possibility. There may be friends who have been confided in. There may be somebody who knows something that she's talked about at school or in the village. Contact us and tell us that. There may be good reasons why you haven't spoken to us before. They may be frightened with this length of time having passed that they'll be criticised if they come forward now. We must speak to them. Tell us now whatever you can to help, and let us be the judge of how useful it is.
In that episode of Crime Watch, Danielle's parents also gave an interview. Her father made it clear he did not believe, not for a second, that she had run away. That just wasn't her. Linda spoke directly to viewers. She pleaded with anyone who might know anything, even the smallest detail, to come forward and contact the police. She said she understood how frightening it could be to step forward, how intimidating that might feel. But, this wasn't about fear anymore. It was about finding their daughter. And they needed help. Stuart Campbell appeared in court for a hearing regarding the extension of his bail. Detective Chief Superintendent Steve Reynolds from the Major Crime Team confirmed that, based on the indecent images of girls found in his home, Campbell had been arrested and charged in relation to those offences. He was taken to the police station in Harlow for questioning. At the same time, investigators continued building the murder case involving Danielle. Campbell's brother, Alex, visited him shortly after the arrest. Later, he recalled what happened. Police had asked him, "Can you speak to him? Then come back and tell us your instinct. What do you think?" Alex said he went in to see his brother, and within 10 minutes, he knew. He believed he was lying. And from that point on, he said, he never doubted it. As police kept updating Danielle's family, the emotional impact was crushing. The man they thought they knew, the man who had been part of their family, now looked like someone completely different. Linda later said one of Campbell's tactics was to create division between parents and daughters, just like he had tried to suggest during questioning that something was wrong inside their home. It became even clearer how manipulative he was. He would tell Danielle that if he were in her position, he wouldn't tolerate his family. Police later discovered that Campbell had kept a journal what officers would refer to as the Danielle Diary. He documented every contact with her, every call, every text. It showed a fixation that was intensifying, and it was deeply disturbing. There was another incident that illustrated his manipulation. He had taken Danielle shopping and to the movies. She told a friend that during that outing, he held her hand. The friend's father became concerned. Later, in a documentary, he said he didn't feel it was appropriate at the time to approach Linda and Tony. He didn't want to damage their relationship with Tony's family. He feared it would be seen as interference. And in that moment, he believed staying silent was the right choice. Campbell exploited the fact that Danielle was growing up. He flattered her. He built up her ego. He pulled her further into his deception. The Crown Prosecution Service, the CPS, concluded that even though Danielle's body had not been found, the evidence gathered was sufficient to charge Stuart Campbell with abduction and murder. He remained in custody for the next 11 months. Despite the murder charge, police received more than 800 reports of alleged sightings of Danielle across the United Kingdom and Europe. Each one had to be investigated. That created enormous logistical challenges for Essex police. Because if even one plausible sighting had been left unchecked, the defense could argue in court that Danielle might still be alive, and that alone could undermine a murder conviction. As the trial approached, one of Danielle's brothers was called as a witness. In preparation, Linda and Tony took both of their sons to court beforehand so they could see the environment and mentally prepare for what was coming. Linda later said the boys were devastated. One of them became reserved and spoke about everything in a flat, factual way. The other was overwhelmed with anger. It wasn't just the trial that was weighing on the Jones family. Tony was self-employed and had to return to running his dry cleaning business. Linda left her part-time job as a cleaner. In a documentary, she explained that because Stuart was connected to Tony's side of the family, it created tension between them. She admitted she felt resentment. She knew it wasn't Tony's fault. But the anger had to go somewhere. She also said that even ordinary things doing the laundry, ironing clothes, had become painful. Because there were no more of Danielle's clothes to wash. In the same documentary, which followed the family during the year after Danielle disappeared, Tony admitted he had fallen out with his parents and his sister. He said things had gone too far to simply go back to how they were. In the months leading up to the trial, search efforts intensified. It wasn't only about finding key evidence to complete the picture of what had happened. The family desperately needed closure. They needed peace. They needed to be able to bury her. 12 days before the trial was due to begin, a body was discovered in Hampshire. Police immediately sealed off the area and began examinations to establish identity. The family, the press, the public, everyone waited. And then, the results came in.
In the last hour, Hampshire police have confirmed that the body found in woodlands near Fleet is the missing schoolgirl Millie Dowler. Forensic teams have been examining the remains all day and tests have been carried out this afternoon.
The police made this statement.
Our worst fears have been confirmed, and I can now tell you that the search for Millie has changed from a missing person inquiry into a murder investigation.
The body was identified as Millie Dowler, a schoolgirl who had been murdered by serial offender Levi Belfield. He wouldn't be convicted for her murder until 10 years later. Millie's case sparked national outrage. It led to a massive investigation into phone hacking and ultimately contributed to the collapse of one of the largest tabloids in the United Kingdom, News of the World. For the Jones family, the identification meant one devastating thing. They were back at the beginning. That fragile hope, the hope that maybe the body wasn't Danielle shattered all over again. Soon, it was time for a pre-trial press conference. Facing the media was incredibly difficult for the family. Standing there, speaking publicly while carrying that level of grief, it was almost unbearable. But they did it, because they still needed answers.
Linda, if I could start with you, tell me about the last time you saw Danielle.
Well, it was the morning that she left for school. Just a very normal morning. Got up, got dressed, said goodbye, see you later. And that, it was just so normal.
I am determined to find Danielle's body. The searches will stop at the end of this month. They will, however, be resumed whenever we received any intelligence that justifies a further search. Now, the date for the searches ceasing actually coincides with the start of the trial, and whilst it was always my intention to continue searching up to the start of the trial, actually we have now come to the end of the intelligence packages which have been repaired, looking at likely deposition sites. But I do stress, and I've reassured Tony and Linda of this, that whenever we get any intelligence which may identify another possible site, we will resume our search.
Then came the trial of Stuart Campbell, the man who had entered their family through marriage, the man they trusted, the man who played the role of the caring uncle. Now he stood accused of abducting and murdering Danielle Jones. The trial, scheduled to last 8 weeks, took place at Chelmsford Crown Court. One journalist described Campbell as self-assured, calm, almost unaffected by the seriousness of the charges against him. Because Danielle's body had never been found, the prosecution's case relied on circumstantial evidence. They had to convince the jury that she had, in fact, been killed. The prosecution argued that Stuart Campbell had been grooming Danielle for years, something Tony and Linda never truly realized. They said he had systematically manipulated her, become obsessively attached, and deliberately driven a wedge between her and her parents. This was the first time her mother and father had seen him since their daughter disappeared. Despite the anger, despite the pain, Linda and Tony sat in that courtroom and looked into the eyes of the man they believed had destroyed their family. The prosecution presented a series of key points. On the morning Danielle was last seen, she had been speaking to a man in a blue van, matching the one owned by Campbell. She disappeared without contacting her parents. White stockings stained with blood were found containing DNA from both Campbell and Danielle. His diary documenting his fixation on teenage girls included entries about persuading young girls to pose topless. And then, there were the text messages. Campbell claimed Danielle had sent them, but they didn't match her usual texting style. She typically wrote in lowercase letters. Those messages were written in capital letters. Forensic linguistic analysis indicated the author was likely Campbell, and that the messages had been crafted to create the illusion that Danielle was still alive. Mobile switching center data dismantled his alibi. He said he had been in Rayleigh, about a 30-minute drive away, at a home improvement store. The phone records did not support that claim. Analysis showed that at the time the messages were sent, both his phone and Danielle's were connected to the same cell tower. Further investigation revealed the two phones remained together near his home for approximately 30 hours after she disappeared. Throughout the trial, Campbell remained silent, but he frequently passed notes to his defense team whenever he appeared dissatisfied with witness testimony, as if he needed to control even the questions being asked. And that, like everything else, painted a picture. After 11 weeks of proceedings, the jury reached a verdict. By majority decision, Stuart Campbell was found guilty of abducting and murdering Danielle Jones. He was sentenced to life imprisonment for murder. That sentence ran alongside a 10-year term for abduction. Later, the High Court ruled that Campbell must serve a minimum of 20 years before becoming eligible to apply for parole. Police planned to question him again before Christmas. He refused to cooperate. After his conviction in 2004, he was granted leave to appeal. His defense argued that the trial judge, Mr. Justice McKinnon, should have excluded certain evidence they believed was overly prejudicial. Specifically, they referred to testimony about his obsession with young girls, his photographing of minors, and his downloading of teenage-related material from the internet. Defense lawyers also petitioned Lord Justice Kennedy, Mr. Justice Simon, and Mr. Justice Bean, claiming the jury panel was flawed. One juror lived only one house away from a police officer involved in the case, and the senior investigating officer resided in the same village. The defense argued the jury should have been discharged. In 2005, the Court of Appeal rejected the appeal. At the inquest into Danielle's death, the conclusion returned was unlawful killing. Police continued to question Campbell while he was in custody. He refused to cooperate. He has never disclosed where Danielle's body is. The case also had a broader impact. The use of text messages as forensic evidence gained significant attention for future criminal trials. At the University of Leicester, researchers established a study group focused on the stylistic analysis of text messages, exploring whether forensic authorship analysis could become a reliable investigative tool in criminal cases. And in many ways, Danielle's case helped shape that conversation. Because, like, the smallest digital detail, even a single word, can matter more than anyone realizes. Later, it was officially announced that Essex Police and Kent Police had launched a search of a row of garages in Thurrock following newly received information. That update quickly drew renewed attention. Even after the conviction, investigators were still acting on fresh leads.
The parents of Danielle Jones have long spoken of the pain and torture they have endured. Their daughter was missing, then murdered. Her uncle was jailed, but has always withheld the details of her burial place. So could this site provide the breakthrough? Focusing on the area hidden by the white tent, these garages are around 6 miles from where Danielle was last seen. Her mother and father came to meet police here earlier, a sign of the significance of this new line of inquiry. They spent 15 minutes at the spot, which police say they never searched a decade and a half ago, despite receiving information at the time.
The information we received was there was some suspicious activity in that area where a male was seen in the garage block shortly after Danielle's disappearance. This is a credible line of inquiry, and we will conduct a thorough and professional search to do all that we can to make sure that we return Danielle's body to her family.
Police have erected fences here at the site, which is around half a mile away from where Campbell lived. The team is expected to be here for the next week, and their excavation work is due to start imminently.
Danielle's parents say they hope this search will bring answers about what happened 16 years ago.
It was later confirmed that the searches turned up nothing. No remains. No new evidence. In 2019, Linda publicly supported a campaign for what became known as Helen's Law, named after murder victim Helen McCourt. The law was designed to address one devastating issue: killers who refuse to reveal where they've hidden their victims' bodies. The campaign had been led for years by Marie McCourt, Helen's mother. Helen was a 22-year-old insurance clerk who was murdered in 1988. Her killer, Ian Sims, has never disclosed the location of her body. The petition calling for Helen's Law gathered more than 600,000 signatures and received support at the highest levels of government. In November 2020, the law received royal assent. Under Helen's Law, an offender can still be considered for parole if no longer deemed a risk to the public, even if they refuse to disclose information. However, the parole board is now legally required to take into account whether the prisoner has cooperated in revealing the location of their victim when making its decision. The Justice Secretary and Lord Chancellor at the time, Robert Buckland, said that denying families the chance to bury their loved ones is a cruelty beyond words, an additional weight on top of unbearable grief. He stated that the law sends a clear message: murderers and dangerous sexual offenders who refuse to provide information about their victims should expect to remain behind bars longer. Because, for families, not knowing is its own kind of sentence. In 2021, Campbell's brother, Alex Sharkey, published a book titled My Brother the Killer. In it, he described what it was like growing up alongside his brother and what happened in the aftermath of Danielle's disappearance. For those closest to the case, the story didn't end with the verdict. It never really does.
20 years ago today, on Monday, the 18th of June 2001, 15-year-old schoolgirl Danielle Sarah Jones left her home in East Tilbury to go to school. Little did anyone on that day know that not only would she never be seen again, but that her disappearance and murder would touch the lives of so many of us here at Essex Police from that moment and for the ensuing 20 years. From her disappearance to the eventual realisation that she had been murdered, to the conviction of her uncle, right through to now, Danielle's murder has affected hundreds of us here at Essex Police. Many of you who have come to know the family through this case still feel their pain as they continue to live without having been able to say a final goodbye to their lovely daughter. They will never give up hope of finding Danielle and giving her the burial that she deserves. And we will always remain committed to achieving this for them. Over the years, we have continued in our commitment to act on every piece of information in the hope that one day we will be able to return Danielle to Mum and Dad and the rest of her family so that she can finally be laid to rest. Today we gather to remember the life of Danielle, that vibrant young girl, to remember the pain and loss of her mum, dad and siblings, to pause and consider all the things that Danielle never got to know and do because her life was so tragically cut short. But most of all, in remembering Danielle, we remember our pledge to her parents and the rest of her family that we will always act on any information we receive that may bring us closer to bringing her home.
Thank you to everyone who watched this video. We truly hope this story meant something to you. If you'd like to support the channel and help us keep creating content like this, please give the video a like, leave a comment, share it, and subscribe. Your support genuinely makes a difference. It helps us continue telling these stories and making sure they are not forgotten. And we honestly appreciate every single one of you who chooses to be here and remembers